Alright, this is the first video in a series of videos for mastering tutorials. Running it live, and yeah, it doesn't seem like there's anybody in here yet, so I guess we'll just jump right into the video. Hopefully some people catch the replay. Alright, mastering EQ time.
Hey guys, I got a little mastering tutorial for you today. This is going to be a short series of videos. This first one we're going to focus on is mastering EQ. I got a lot of people asking me about the mastering process. It seems to be the thing that people have the most trouble with, and I can understand why. Mastering is a very subtle art. It's a lot of tiny moves, little, very small tweaks. And people tend to go too big. They tend to think they need to crank a certain frequency way too high. And while that may be certain on individual tracks in the mixing phase, when we get into the mastering phase, it's about the overall picture, and less is more. It really is. So here's the track we're going to be working with today. This is a track that I've mastered previously, so basically I'm going to be bypassing and unbypassing a lot of things so that you can see what I've done. And as you can see, I'm working in Pro Tools. This, most people try to stick to just stock plugins. The reason being that every single DAW comes with a bunch of stock plugins, and for the most part, they're the same across DAWs. But when we get into the mastering phase, I tend to get a little more specific. I go for very specific plugins that do different things. So some of the plugins in here I'm using are free and they just come with the DAW, and other ones are things that I've paid for and I use specifically for this. Now, even the things that I've paid for, you can find either cheaper or even free versions that are things that are similar, but for the most part, I don't know, some of them are a bit expensive, I will admit. But when we're getting into mastering, it's worth it to have them. I'm not telling you to go out and buy them. I'm just saying in general, having those plugins that do very specific things that I want them to is better than just trying to guess and figure it out with other plugins. It's like, I know what these plugins do. I know exactly what I'm using it for. If you don't know what you're going to be using it for, then I would not recommend buying these plugins. But if you do, then they might be worth the investment. So anyway, this is the track we're working with. I'll just give you a quick listen to the beginning of it. So as you can see, we're lucky enough to have a track that's already very well mixed. This is going to make our mastering process even easier. If you're starting out, it might actually make it more difficult because you're going to think that you need to do things to it that don't need to be done. And that's a mistake that I see a lot of beginners making, is they think that they're supposed to do a certain thing every single time. So they do it on every track, and sometimes the tracks don't need it. Sometimes the tracks are well enough done in an earlier phase. You don't need to do anything. I see the same thing in mixing. If the tracks are well recorded enough, especially guitars, if the guitars are well recorded enough, they're compressed on the way in and everything, you don't necessarily need to add a compressor after the fact to the guitars. And when we get into mastering, it's the same thing. People are used to getting tracks that were probably not very well mixed, so they're used to over processing in the mastering phase, and it's really not necessary. So really, it's all about, you got to use your ears, guys. You really do. It's just listen to what the track actually needs and try it out and do what I'm about to show you. And when you think you have something that's going to work, turn it on and off a few times to see the difference and see if it's something you actually want to do. So we're going to start opening up just this simple 7-band EQ that comes stock with Pro Tools. And actually, first I'm going to loop the final chorus of the track so you can really see. The reason you want to loop the final chorus is that's generally where there's going to be the most instrumentation. And we want to show you what is changing on a part where everything's there. Then after that, you can go back and you can check it on the thinner parts and see if it needs to be there or not. But usually it's a good place to start is the final chorus. So we're going to open up this 7-band EQ. And first thing I did, I set the Q, it's a low band notch out. So it's about 2.5 Q. And the frequency is about 45 hertz. And I took out 1.7 dB of that frequency. The reason being, if you listen, the kick and just the low end, there's a little too much like low end rumble in it. If you take a listen real quick. See, that kick is just a little too boomy for me. So I just did this little cut and listen to what it does. I'm going to turn it on and off for you. See how that just tightens up that low end just a little bit? And again, it's a 2.5 Q, so it's a very narrow band. And I only took out about 1.5 dB. And the reason being, in the mastering phase, we want to do really small notches. All right, the next thing I did was I took out a 1.66 Q notch out of 274 hertz. And I only took out 0.7 dB of that. And, oh, excuse me, I raised it 0.7 dB. My mistake. I raised it 0.7 dB, and the reason being, it's been a while since I've been through this track. I'm going to assume that the reason I did that was to make the snare pop a little bit more, because generally, where you're going to use to make the snare pop out is usually around 250 hertz. So this one's probably a little higher tuned, so it's probably coming out at 274. So let's listen. I'm going to turn it on and off so you can hear what that does. Okay, so I think that was actually more than that. It did make the snare pop a little more, which you could hear just the high end of the snare, like the sizzle kind of under the snare. That definitely stuck out a little more in the mix. But I think that was also meant to boost a little bit of the bass in there, actually, the bass guitar, because that's the high end of the bass. And if you listen to that bass track, there's a lot of like high end noodling he's doing. All right, the next one is 2.26 Q at about 1K, and it's just a 0.8 dB boost. 0.8 dB boost. That is just because probably they notched out a lot of the mids in the mix, which happens a lot. People generally scoop the mids like crazy in the mix. So that's probably just to fill that back in a little bit. 1K, 1 to 2K is usually where you get a lot of the body of the guitar as well as a lot of vocals. So that's probably a little bit of a vocal boost and to fill out the mid-range of the guitar. Yeah, so you almost entirely lose the guitar without that there. So that's really helpful, especially because it's a really delicate guitar work. There's a lot of synths in the background too, which we're going to get into in a second. But yeah, just the guitar work, especially, you almost entirely lose it because it's such a full mix. All right, we're going to skip the high mid frequency for a second. We're going to go straight to the high shelf we have going on. It's 1Q because it's a shelf. You don't really need to adjust the Q on a shelf usually. And we're at 10K, and we're actually doing a pretty fair amount of boosting here. We're doing a 2.3 dB boost, and that is just to bring out some of the intricacies of the synths and the strings, just to make it sound like an overall fuller mix, because there's a lot of things that have high frequencies bumping around up there. So when you do a high shelf, it just kind of fills out everything. Yep. See, it just the ambience and all that, that's all up in that really high K range, 10K and above. Sometimes you can boost as low as like 6, 7K, but I usually try to do those high shelves at 10K or above. And as you heard, it just fills out the ambience in the track. Now, this one, it's a 1.5Q. It's a 0.7 dB boost, and it's at 4.3K. And the reason for this is because when you boost that high end, it's almost a little too much high. So what this does is it kind of brings out a little bit of the lower end of the synths and such, because with the high end, you get a lot of the wash sound, like that shh sound. So the 4.3K is to fill out a bit more of the melody itself. And probably a little bit of the vocals too. It'll bring that up a little bit, make that stick out a little more. Take a listen. See, just a lot of really small adjustments in the EQ. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the whole thing, the whole EQ off and on with the bypass, so you can hear the real difference. Because when you listen to each one individually, it kind of might seem like there's not too much going on. But when you bypass the whole thing, you can see that a lot of little moves add up to a very big change in sound. So let's switch it up. Here's with the EQ first, and then I'm going to take it out. See what I mean? It just, as soon as that EQ goes off, you can tell it just sounds so much flatter. It's mastering EQs is one of those things that as you're adding things or taking little things away, you feel like you're not doing a lot. But then when you switch off and on that whole thing, you can really see the difference you're making. All right, guys, so that's the mastering EQ. I'm going to do more videos. I have, 6 more plugins to go through, so it'll probably be about 6 more videos. And just so you can see what my mastering chain is, I might leave these 2 out because they're they're just kind of cheating, really. But yeah, we'll definitely go through these next 4 so you can see what's going on. And I thought mastering would be a good idea because people seem to struggle with that the most. Now, if you're one of the people that not only struggles with mastering, or if you don't even do mastering, you might be one of the people that has this other complaint I've heard a lot. And a lot of people seem to have trouble dealing with clients. like how to interact with them in the studio, how to get them to do what they need to do, how to get them to focus, just simple things like that. Just really just kind of management of the clients. So if you want to learn how to deal with that, you can download my free studio client interaction guide. Just go to garagerecordingacademy.com and you'll see there's a little form you got to put in your email address, and then we'll email that form straight to your inbox. So again, that's garagerecordingacademy.com. I'll put the link in the description below. And if you want to stick around for a little Q&A after this video, we're going to be live for about 5 more minutes after this section of the video is over, so you can ask any questions you might have about mastering EQ. Thank you guys so much. Keep an eye out for the next video, and yeah, just thanks for sticking around.
All right, so if there's anybody that has questions about mastering EQ, I'd be happy to answer those now. We don't seem to have any questions. So, oh, thank you, Don. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, if anyone has questions, you can put it in the chat right now. I'd be happy to answer any for you. All right. I don't think we have any questions. So, make sure to check out the mastering compression video tomorrow. It'll be same time, 7 p.m. Eastern, tomorrow night. That's September 25th. And yeah, I'm Zach Primrose. This is the Garage Recording Academy. This is the first video we posted, so I appreciate anyone who's watching. And for those of you who didn't make it to the live event, hope you're watching the replay and try to make it to the next live events. We're doing them for the rest of the week. Same time every night, 7 p.m. every night up until September 29th to finish out this mastering tutorial series. Yeah, thank you guys. And make sure you go and download the Studio Client Interactions Guide at garagerecordingacademy.com. If you've ever had any issues with clients, that'll help you dig yourself out of the rut. All right. Thanks again.